The cathedral bells rang like accusations across the morning sky, their bronze voices carrying secrets that would soon shatter more than just the silence. Maya Chen stood at the back of St. Augustine's chapel, her hands trembling as she clutched a manila envelope that felt heavier than her own heart. Through the stained glass windows, colored light painted the assembled guests in shades of deception, reds like the lies she'd discovered, blues like the tears she'd cried in private, yellows like the cowardice she was about to shed forever. Her sister Lily glided down the aisle in a dress worth more than Maya's annual rent, the train flowing behind her like liquid moonlight. 6 months ago, Maya had stood in the same bridal shop, touching that very dress with reverent fingers, dreaming of her own wedding day. The irony tasted bitter as copper pennies on her tongue. The dress had been hers first, paid for with money that had vanished from her wedding fund account like morning mist, leaving behind only empty promises and forged signatures. "She looks radiant, doesn't she?" whispered Mrs. Patterson, the elderly church organist who had known both sisters since they were children, sneaking communion wafers from the vestry. Her weathered hands adjusted the sheet music, fingers that had played countless weddings, countless farewells. "Though I must say, I never expected Lily to marry before you. You were always the responsible one, the planner." Maya's throat constricted. If Mrs. Patterson only knew how much planning had been undone, how many carefully saved dollars had been redirected to fund this very ceremony. The elderly woman's eyes held genuine warmth, the kind of affection that made lies burn deeper. "Yes," Maya managed, her voice barely audible above the processional music. "She certainly does." The chapel was a symphony of whispers and rustling silk. Maya recognized faces from her childhood, neighbors who had watched both sisters grow up, family friends who had celebrated birthdays and graduations, aunts and uncles who had no idea they were witnessing the culmination of the most elaborate betrayal imaginable. Her cousin David sat in the third pew, his wife Sarah beside him, both of them occasionally glancing back with sympathetic smiles. They thought Maya was simply emotional about her sister's wedding, moved to tears by the beauty of the moment. If only they knew the tears were for her own stolen dreams. The groom, Marcus Wellington III, stood at the altar like a monument to old money and older traditions. His family had built their fortune in shipping, their name etched into the city's founding documents and charity galas. He was everything their parents had dreamed of for one of their daughters: wealthy, connected, respectable. What he wasn't, Maya had recently discovered, was the man Lily actually loved. The envelope in Maya's hands contained photographs, bank statements, hotel receipts, and text messages that painted a very different picture of her sister's romance. While Marcus had been courting Lily with museum dates and charity dinners, Lily had been meeting someone else in shadowy corners of the city, someone whose existence would not only destroy this fairy tale wedding, but unravel the entire web of lies that had funded it. Maya's phone buzzed against her ribs, a text from her fiancé, James. "Still can't believe you gave up our wedding fund for this. Your heart is too big, love. Can't wait to start saving again together." The message twisted like a knife between her ribs. James thought she had voluntarily sacrificed our wedding fund to help pay for Lily's dream ceremony. He had been disappointed but understanding, calling her generous to a fault. The truth was so much uglier than his noble interpretation. The music swelled, and Father Murphy began the ceremony with words that had sanctified unions for centuries. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." His voice carried the weight of traditions, of sacred promises that were supposed to last lifetimes. Maya wondered how many of the vows spoken in this chapel had been built on foundations as rotten as the ones supporting Lily's marriage. She thought of their grandmother's ring, the one that had been promised to the first granddaughter to marry. It caught the light on Lily's finger now, a family heirloom that had traveled across an ocean in their great-grandmother's desperate hands during a war that had torn their homeland apart. The ring was supposed to carry blessings, protection, hope for the future. Instead, it adorned a hand that had forged signatures and stolen dreams without hesitation.
"If anyone has just cause why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." Father Murphy's words hung in the air like a challenge, like a dare. Maya felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes, though none of them were looking at her. They were focused on the couple at the altar, on the fairy tale moment that was about to be consecrated with sacred vows. The silence stretched taut as a violin string, pregnant with the possibility that someone might actually speak. But not yet. Maya had learned patience over the past 6 months of investigation, 6 months of following paper trails and collecting evidence. She had learned that timing was everything, that the truth delivered at the wrong moment could be dismissed as jealousy or spite. She needed witnesses, needed undeniable proof, needed the moment when denial would be impossible. The chapel held its collective breath. In the front pew, Maya's parents sat with tears of joy streaming down their faces. Her father, Dr. Richard Chen, had worked double shifts at the hospital to help pay for this wedding, believing he was investing in his daughter's happiness. Her mother, Angela, had spent countless hours on the phone with caterers and florists, pouring her love into every detail of the celebration. They had no idea their generosity had been manipulated, their savings diverted to cover the cost of Lily's deception. "I love watching love triumph," whispered Mrs. Patterson, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "In times like these, when the world seems so dark, a wedding reminds us that hope survives." Maya nodded, though her definition of hope had changed dramatically over the past months. Hope was no longer about fairy tale endings and perfect ceremonies. Hope was about truth surviving deception, about justice emerging from the shadows, about the courage to speak when speaking would cost everything. The ceremony continued with readings about love and commitment, words that sounded hollow when Maya knew what she knew. Lily's maid of honor, their cousin Rebecca, delivered a poem about sisterly bonds and shared dreams that made Maya's stomach clench with irony. Rebecca had always idolized Lily, had never seen past the carefully constructed facade to the calculating mind beneath. As Father Murphy guided the couple through their vows, Maya noticed the nervous energy radiating from the third pew, where a man in an expensive but understated suit kept checking his phone. She had seen him before, following him through 3 different hotels over the past month. His name was Alex Morrison, and he was the reason this entire wedding was a performance rather than a celebration. The envelope in Maya's hands contained photo evidence of Lily and Alex together, bank records showing payments to Alex from the stolen wedding fund, and most damaging of all, text messages discussing their plans to disappear together after the wedding. The marriage to Marcus was never meant to last beyond the honeymoon. It was an elaborate insurance policy, a way to secure financial stability before running away with her true love. Do you, Marcus Wellington, take Lily Chen to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer and for poorer, for better and for worse, until death do you part? Marcus's voice rang clear and certain. "I do." Maya felt something break inside her chest, a sound like crystal hitting marble. Marcus meant those words. He believed in the woman standing before him, believed in the future they were promising each other. He had no idea he was being used as a stepping stone to someone else's happy ending.
Do you, Lily Chen, take Marcus Wellington to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer and for poorer, for better and for worse, until death do you part? The pause was infinitesimal, so brief that only someone watching with Maya's intensity would have noticed it. Lily's eyes flickered toward the third pew, toward Alex, before returning to Marcus's face. When she spoke, her voice carried all the conviction of a seasoned actress. "I do." The lie hung in the sacred air like incense, sweet-smelling but ultimately ephemeral. Maya gripped the envelope tighter, feeling the edges of photographs cutting into her palm through the manila. Soon, she told herself, very soon the truth would have its moment. But not yet. The performance wasn't over. As Father Murphy began the ring ceremony, Maya noticed her phone buzzing again. This time, it wasn't James. It was Detective Sarah Martinez, the investigator who had helped Maya trace the stolen funds. The text was simple: additional evidence secured, standing by. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. The investigation had revealed more than just personal betrayal. It had uncovered a pattern of financial fraud that stretched beyond Maya's stolen wedding fund. Lily and Alex had been running similar scams in other cities, targeting wealthy families and trusting siblings. Maya's case wasn't unique. It was just the latest in a series of elaborate cons that had left devastation in their wake. The rings were exchanged with trembling hands, Marcus's from emotion, Lily's from what Maya now recognized as fear. The golden bands caught the colored light from the stand glass, reflecting rainbows that would have seemed like blessings to anyone who didn't know the truth. By the power vested in me by the state and by God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Marcus, you may kiss your bride. The kiss lasted exactly long enough to be convincing, exactly long enough for the photographer to capture the perfect shot. Maya watched her sister perform love with the skill of a method actress, watched Marcus pour his genuine devotion into a moment that meant nothing to the woman in his arms. The congregation erupted in applause and tears of joy. Mrs. Patterson launched into the recessional with fingers that danced across the keys like blessings. The newlyweds walked back down the aisle, hands clasped, faces glowing with what everyone assumed was happiness. Everyone except Maya, who saw the quick glance Lily threw toward Alex, the subtle nod he gave in return. The plan was proceeding perfectly. The wedding was complete, the funds were secured, and the escape route was clear. But Maya had plans of her own. As the wedding party began filing out for photographs, Maya felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. She turned to find Father Murphy looking at her with concerned eyes that had witnessed too many family dramas to count. "Are you all right, my dear? You look troubled." Maya looked into his kind face, seeing the wisdom of decades spent counseling parishioners through their darkest moments. "Father," she said quietly, "what would you do if you knew someone was about to make a terrible mistake? If staying silent would protect them from immediate pain, but cause much greater suffering later?" Father Murphy studied her face carefully. "Truth has its own timing," he said finally, "but when the moment comes, we must have the courage to speak it, regardless to the cost to ourselves. The question is not whether to tell the truth, but when and how to tell it with the most compassion and the least harm." Maya nodded, understanding flooding through her like sunlight. "Thank you, Father."
Whatever burden you're carrying, child, remember that secrets have a way of revealing themselves. Often our job is simply to ensure they're revealed in a way that serves justice rather than vengeance. As Father Murphy moved away to congratulate the family, Maya stood alone in the emptying chapel. The colored light from the windows had shifted with the sun, painting the pews in deeper shades of revelation. The envelope in her hands no longer felt heavy, it felt necessary, inevitable, like the next note in a song that had been playing since the moment she discovered the first forged signature. Outside, she could hear the laughter and conversations of wedding guests gathering for photographs. The reception would begin in an hour, followed by toasts and dancing, by speeches about love and commitment and bright futures. It would be beautiful and heartwarming and completely false. But not for much longer. Maya walked toward the chapel doors, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown timer. Through the open doors, she could see Lily posing with the wedding party, her smile radiant and convincing. Marcus stood beside her like a man who had won the lottery of love, unaware that his ticket was counterfeit. The investigation had taken 6 months. The revelation would take 6 minutes, and the consequences would last a lifetime. As Maya stepped into the sunlight, she pulled out her phone and typed a message to Detective Martinez. Proceed with arrests at the reception. I'll provide the distraction. The response came immediately. Are you sure about the timing? This will destroy more than just your sister. Maya looked across the gardens where wedding guests were already sampling champagne and admiring the elaborate displays of flowers. Flowers paid for with her stolen dreams. I'm sure, she typed back. Some things are more important than a perfect wedding day. The detective's final message was brief. Understood. We'll be ready. Maya slipped the phone back into her purse and walked toward the reception tent, where servers were putting finishing touches on a celebration that would go down in family history, just not in the way anyone expected. Maya had never imagined that betrayal could taste like wedding cake. She stood at the edge of the reception tent, watching guests sample the elaborate dessert display that included a towering cake topped with sugar flowers, so realistic they seemed to hold morning dew. Each delicate petal had been crafted in hand, each tier assembled with the precision of an architect and the artistry of a poet. The cake alone had cost more than Maya earned in 2 months at the nonprofit where she managed grant applications for homeless shelters. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was about to destroy something so beautiful. Maya, her mother's voice cut through the din of celebration like a familiar melody. Angela Chen approached with the purposeful stride of someone who spent the morning orchestrating perfection. Her navy blue dress was elegant but practical, chosen more for its ability to withstand the demands of hosting than for its aesthetic appeal. There you are. I was worried you'd gotten lost in the crowd. Maya forced a smile, the expression feeling foreign on her face. Just taking it all in, Mom. Everything looks incredible. Your sister deserves incredible. Angela's eyes sparkled with the kind of maternal pride that made Maya's chest ache. Late nights at the gallery, saving every penny. If her mother only knew that those late nights had been spent planning elaborate cons and those savings had come from Maya's own wedding account. Angela had no idea that her pride was misplaced, her joy built on foundations of sand.
She certainly worked hard for this moment, Maya said carefully, each word chosen to carry truth without revealing it prematurely. Angela squeezed Maya's arm with hands that had worked as a nurse for 30 years before retiring to help plan her daughter's futures. I know it's hard watching your little sister get married first, but your time will come, sweetheart. James is a wonderful man, and when you two are ready? When we can afford it, Maya finished, tasting bitterness. Money isn't everything, dear. Your father and I got married with $20 and a borrowed dress. What matters is love. Angela's voice carried the wisdom of someone who had built a life on modest means and genuine affection. Besides, you are so generous giving Lily that loan. Not every sister would sacrifice her own wedding fund to help. Excuse me. Maya's voice came out sharper than intended. She softened it immediately, not wanting to alarm her mother. I need to check on something. Before Angela could respond, Maya walked away, her heels sinking slightly into the manicured grass. She passed clusters of guests sampling hors d'oeuvres that cost more per bite than most people's lunch. Their conversations a mixture of admiration for the wedding's elegance and gossip about other society events. The Wellington family had spared no expense, their generosity authentic if even the bride receiving it wasn't. Maya found herself at a quiet corner of the garden where white roses climbed a trellis in careful precision. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos she had taken over the past 6 months. The evidence of her sister's deception was overwhelming once you knew what to look for, but it had taken Maya weeks to accept what she was seeing. The first suspicious transaction had appeared on her wedding fund statement in February, a withdrawal of $1,500 with a signature that looked almost like hers. Almost, but not quite. The M in Maya was too looped, the Y too rounded. She had called the bank immediately, certain there had been a mistake. I'm sorry, Miss Chen, but the signature matches our records. The account shows authorized access for Lily Chen as well, added when the account was opened. Maya had stared at her phone in confusion. She had never authorized Lily's access to her wedding fund. The account had been opened when Maya started her job at the nonprofit 3 years ago with dreams of a simple but beautiful ceremony. She had been saving steadily, adding a portion of each paycheck to the fund, watching it grow from hope into possibility. "There must be some mistake," Maya had insisted. "I never added my sister to this account." The silence on the other end of the line had been telling. "Miss Chen, would you be able to come in to review the original documentation? We can pull the signature cards from when the account was established." That visit to the bank had been the beginning of Maya's education in family betrayal. The signature adding Lily to the account was clearly forged, but it was a skilled forgery, one that suggested practice and planning. Maya had sat in the bank manager's office, staring at her own forged signature, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "How long has this been happening?" she had asked. The manager, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes and uncomfortable news, had pulled up the account history. The first withdrawal by the secondary account holder was 6 months ago. Small amounts at first, 100 here, 50 there. The larger withdrawals began 3 months ago. Maya had watched 6 months of savings disappear, transaction by transaction, into what she now knew had been the funding for Lily's elaborate con. The money had been used to rent expensive apartments for meeting wealthy men, to buy designer clothing for playing the role of a sophisticated art dealer, to pay for dinners and hotels where she had convinced Marcus Wellington that she was worthy of their family's fortune.
Now, standing in the garden where her stolen money had helped pay for imported roses and crystal champagne flutes, Maya felt the full weight of her sister's calculations. This wasn't a crime of passion or desperation. It was a carefully orchestrated performance, one that had required months of planning and the ruthless willingness to destroy her sister's dreams. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "How's the wedding? Wish I could be there with you. Give Lily my congratulations and tell her she looked beautiful in the photos you sent." Maya's throat constricted. James was working a double shift at the veterinary clinic, earning overtime to help rebuild their wedding fund. He didn't know that his girlfriend was currently attending a ceremony funded by their stolen dreams, that every flower arrangement and catered appetizer represented another dollar taken from their future together. She typed back, "Wedding is memorable. Love you." It wasn't a lie, exactly. This wedding would certainly be memorable, just not in the way anyone expected. "Maya!" A familiar voice called from across the garden. Rebecca, Lily's maid of honor, and their mutual cousin, approached with a champagne glass in one hand and a concerned expression on her face. Rebecca worked as a social worker in the city, her days spent advocating for families in crisis. She had been the one to introduce Lily to the art gallery job that had provided cover for her criminal activities. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Rebecca said, studying Maya's face with the practiced eye of someone trained to recognize trauma. "Are you okay? I know weddings can be emotional, especially when you're planning your own." Maya almost laughed at the irony. She had been planning her own wedding for 2 years, saving every possible dollar, researching venues, dreaming of a dress that would make James's breath catch in his throat. Those dreams had evaporated with each forged signature, each stolen dollar, each lie Lily had told to cover her tracks. "I'm just thinking about how quickly things can change," Maya said carefully. "Knowing can be scary," Rebecca nodded sympathetically. "But look at Lily. 6 months ago, she was struggling to make rent, working at that gallery for practically nothing. Now she's married to one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. Sometimes life surprises us with blessings we never expected." The words were meant to be comforting, but they hit Maya like acid rain. Rebecca had no idea that Lily's struggles 6 months ago had been fabricated, part of an elaborate setup to gain sympathy and access to family resources. The gallery job was real, but it had been a calculated choice, a way to meet wealthy collectors and identify potential marks. "You know what I've learned working with families?" Rebecca continued, sipping her champagne. "The strongest bonds are forged through hardship. You and Lily supporting each other through tough times. That's what real sisterhood looks like." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak.
In Rebecca's worldview, Maya had been the generous older sister, sacrificing her own wedding fund to help Lily achieve her dreams. It was a beautiful story, the kind that restored faith in family bonds and selfless love. The truth was so much uglier, so much more devastating to everyone who believed in that story. "I should go find Lily," Maya said finally. "Make sure she's not overwhelmed by all the attention." Rebecca smiled warmly. "She's lucky to have you looking out for her. I know this day means everything to both of you." As Rebecca walked away, Maya felt the weight of how many people would be hurt by what was about to happen. Rebecca would feel guilty for unknowingly facilitating the con. Angela and Richard would be devastated by their younger daughter's betrayal and their older daughter's deception in handling it alone. James would struggle with the knowledge that Maya had investigated her own sister for months without telling him. But the alternative was allowing the con to succeed, letting Marcus build his future on lies, letting Lily and Alex disappear with stolen money to repeat the same crime against other families. Maya had spent 3 sleepless months weighing the options before realizing there was really only one choice.
She walked toward the main reception area, where the wedding party was posing for photographs near a fountain adorned with floating candles. Lily stood at the center, radiant in her stolen dress, her smile bright enough to power the string lights overhead. She looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way that made Maya's revelation even more complicated. Was it possible that Lily had convinced herself this was love? That somewhere in the elaborate con, she had found real feelings for Marcus? Maya had wondered about this during her investigation, watching her sister's interactions with her new husband. There were moments of what seemed like genuine affection, touches that lingered longer than performance required, glances that held warmth beyond calculation. But then Maya would remember the text messages with Alex, the stolen money, the forged signatures, and she would realize that even if Lily felt something for Marcus, it wasn't enough to overcome her larger plans. Love, real love, didn't involve destroying another person's trust. It didn't involve stealing from family members to fund elaborate deceptions. "Maya!" Lily's voice rang across the garden like silver bells. "Come join us for photos! The photographer wants some sister shots!" Maya found herself walking toward the group, her feet moving independent of her conscious mind. The photographer, an artistic woman with expensive equipment and an eye for capturing emotion, positioned Maya next to Lily with professional efficiency. "Beautiful. The family resemblance is striking. Now, Maya, could you put your arm around your sister? Perfect. Now both of you look at me and think about your happiest memory together." Maya's mind went blank. What was their happiest memory? Building blanket forts as children? The Christmas morning when Lily had given her a handmade book of sister coupons, promising everything from homework help to shared desserts? Their last spring break together in college, when they had driven to the coast and spent 3 days talking about their dreams for the future? All of those memories felt contaminated now, viewed through the lens of what she knew about her sister's capacity for deception. Had any of it been real? Had Lily ever genuinely loved her, or had Maya always been just another mark, another resource to be exploited when the time was right? Beautiful! The family resemblance is striking! Now, Maya, could you put your arm around your sister? Perfect! Now both of you look at me and think about your happiest memory together. Lily squeezed Maya's hand, the gesture seeming spontaneous and affectionate. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to hope that this was real, that whatever else was happening, her sister still loved her. Then she felt Lily's fingers tracing a pattern on her palm, a childhood code they had developed for secret communication during family dinners and church services. The pattern spelled out, "Thank you. Thank you. For the stolen money, for the silence, for making this elaborate con possible through her unwitting cooperation, and later her conscious choice not to expose it immediately." Lily thought Maya was complicit, that the investigation and evidence gathering were preparation for this moment of shared triumph. Maya pulled her hand away as if burned. "I need to check on something," she said, her voice barely audible.
The photographer looked concerned. "Are you feeling all right? You look pale." "Wedding nerves," Lily said smoothly, her eyes meeting Maya's with a look that carried warning. "My sister gets emotional at big family events. Always has." The dismissal stung more than the theft had. Maya was being reduced to an emotional, unstable sister whose feelings could be managed and whose reactions could be predicted. In Lily's calculation, Maya was safe. Too loving to truly expose her, too family-oriented to destroy a wedding, too invested in keeping peace to choose justice over harmony. Lily had miscalculated.
Maya walked away from the photo session, past guests who were beginning to take their seats for dinner, past servers arranging elaborate centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She found herself in the bridal suite, a luxurious space that had been reserved for last-minute touch-ups and private family moments. The room was filled with remnants of wedding preparation, makeup brushes and hairspray, discarded tissue paper from gift unwrapping, the simple dress Maya had worn to the ceremony hanging on a hook by the window. She looked at her reflection in the ornate mirror, seeing a woman who looked older than her 28 years, stress and sleepless nights etched in the lines around her eyes. Her phone rang. Detective Martinez. "Maya, we're in position. Are you ready?" Maya looked around the bridal suite one more time, at the evidence of a fairy tale day built on stolen dreams and elaborate lies. Through the window, she could see guests taking their seats for dinner, Marcus at the head table looking genuinely happy, Lily beside him playing the perfect bride. "I'm ready," she said. "Remember, once we start, there's no going back. Are you certain this is what you want?" Maya thought about James working overtime to rebuild their wedding fund, about Marcus building his future on lies, about other families who might become victims if this pattern continued. She thought about the sister she had loved and protected and supported for 28 years, and the stranger who had been revealed through months of investigation. "I'm certain," she said. "It's time for the truth." The dinner service began with a champagne toast that tasted like promises about to be broken. Maya stood at the back of the reception tent, watching 300 guests raise their glasses in celebration of a union that would be dissolved before the honeymoon luggage was unpacked. The golden liquid caught the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead, each bubble rising to the surface like a secret struggling to escape. Marcus rose from his seat at the head table, his face glowing with the kind of joy that made Maya's stomach clench with anticipation of what was coming. He was a good man. She had learned that during her investigation. He volunteered at children's hospitals, donated quietly to causes he believed in, treated service staff with genuine respect. He deserved better than what was about to happen, but he also deserved the truth. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily across the tent. "6 months ago, I thought I knew what love was. Then I met Lily, and I realized I had been living in black and white, waiting for someone to show me color." The guests murmured appreciatively, many dabbing at their eyes with cloth napkins. Maya felt bile rise in her throat. 6 months ago was exactly when Lily's withdrawals from the stolen wedding fund had been escalating. The timeline was perfect, devastating proof of how calculated this entire romance had been. "Lily taught me that love isn't just about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who challenges you to become the best version of yourself. Someone who makes you want to build a life worthy of the gift they've given you." Lily rose from her seat, accepting the microphone with the poise of someone who had rehearsed this moment. Maya noticed Alex Morrison in the third row, his phone discreetly recording the speech. Evidence for blackmail, Maya realized with growing horror. They weren't just planning to disappear with Marcus's money. They were documenting his humiliation for future exploitation. "Marcus," Lily began, her voice trembling with what the audience interpreted as emotion, but Maya recognized as barely controlled excitement.
When I was a little girl, I used to dream about my wedding day. I imagined the dress, the flowers, the cake, all the beautiful details that would make the day perfect. But I never imagined the most important part, finding someone who would love me not despite my flaws, but because of them. Maya's hands clenched into fists. She remembered Lily's actual childhood dreams, shared during late-night conversations when they were supposed to be sleeping. Lily had wanted to be
A teacher, to travel the world, to write books about her adventures. She had been curious and kind, helping wounded animals and standing up to bullies at school. When had that girl transformed into someone capable of such elaborate cruelty? "You've given me more than a wedding," Lily continued, tears glistening in her eyes like diamonds. "You've given me a future I never dared to hope for, a family that accepts me completely, resources to pursue my dreams, and the security to be vulnerable with someone who will protect that vulnerability forever." The irony was suffocating. Lily was describing the very thing she was about to destroy, the security and trust that Marcus was offering in good faith. Maya pulled out her phone, checking the time. Detective Martinez and her team were positioned around the perimeter of the reception, waiting for Maya's signal. The dinner service continued with military precision, each course timed to perfection by caterers who had managed society events for decades. Maya watched guests enjoy food that cost more per plate than many families spent on groceries in a month, their conversations a blend of admiration for the event's elegance and speculation about the couple's future. "They'll probably honeymoon in Tuscany," she overheard Mrs. Wellington, Marcus's mother, telling a group of family friends. "Marcus has been talking about showing her the vineyard where his grandfather proposed to his grandmother. Such a romantic tradition. 3 generations of Wellington men finding love in the same place." Maya's heart ached for Mrs. Wellington, a gracious woman who had welcomed Lily into the family with genuine warmth. During Maya's investigation, she had learned that Mrs. Wellington had been battling cancer treatments while planning the wedding, determined to see her son married before her health declined further. This celebration represented hope and legacy to her, the continuation of family traditions that stretched back generations. "Excuse me, miss." A server appeared at Maya's elbow, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Would you care for a canapé?" Maya looked down at the elegant appetizers, each one a miniature work of art. "What are they?" "Smoked salmon on potato blinis with creme fraiche and caviar," the server explained with professional enthusiasm. "The chef sources the salmon from Scotland and the caviar from—" "I'm not hungry," Maya interrupted, then immediately felt guilty for her rudeness. The server was just doing their job, probably working multiple events over the weekend to make ends meet. "Thank you, though. Everything looks beautiful." The server smiled and moved on, leaving Maya to contemplate the irony of her loss of appetite at an event funded by her stolen dreams. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, her stomach too knotted with anxiety to accept food, but the sight of such extravagance made eating feel like a betrayal of her own principles. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "How's the party? Send me pictures of the cake. I want to see what we're aiming for when it's our turn." Maya's vision blurred as she typed back, "Cake is incredible. You'll love it." She attached a photo she had taken earlier, the towering confection looking like something from a fairy tale. What she didn't add was that their turn had been indefinitely postponed by the very sister whose celebration James was admiring from afar. "Maya?" Dr. Richard Chen appeared at her side, his expression concerned. Her father had changed from his ceremony clothes into a more comfortable suit, but he still looked distinguished, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent 30 decades saving lives in emergency rooms. Richard Chen had worked 18-hour days to build a life for his family, sacrificing sleep and personal time to provide opportunities his own parents could never have imagined. The thought of his disappointment when the truth emerged made Maya's chest constrict with anticipated grief. "Just thinking, Dad. It's been quite a day."
Indeed, it has. Richard's smile carried paternal pride and exhaustion in equal measure. "Your mother and I are so grateful that you girls have each other. In our culture, family bonds are sacred. They're supposed to last lifetimes, survive any hardship. Seeing you support Lily's dreams, even when it meant postponing your own wedding, that's the kind of sacrifice that defines character. The praise felt like acid on an open wound. Maya wanted to tell her father that there had been no sacrifice, no noble gesture of sisterly love. There had only been theft, forgery, and months of lies wrapped in the beautiful packaging of family loyalty. "Dad," Maya began, then stopped. How could she explain what was about to happen? How could she prepare him for the revelation that would shatter his faith in family bonds and sacred trust? "What is it, sweetheart?" Richard's voice carried the gentle concern of someone who had spent years listening to people's worst fears, their most desperate confessions. "I just want you to know that I love you and Mom. Whatever happens tonight, remember that I love you both." Richard's brow furrowed with confusion and growing alarm. "Maya, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Are you sick? Are you and James having problems?" Before Maya could answer, the lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the head table. The best man, Marcus's brother Jonathan, rose to deliver his speech, commanding the attention of every guest in the tent. Maya used the distraction to squeeze her father's hand and slip away, positioning herself near the tent's main entrance, where Detective Martinez was waiting with 2 uniformed officers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jonathan began, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone born into privilege. "I've known Marcus my entire life, and I've never seen him as happy as he's been these past 6 months. Lily, you've transformed my brother from a workaholic bachelor into someone who talks about building a treehouse for future children and planning anniversary trips to places he can't even pronounce." The guests laughed appreciatively, their faces glowing with champagne and the warmth of shared celebration. Maya watched Lily accept the praise with graceful modesty, her hand resting on Marcus's arm in a gesture that looked possessive to anyone who knew what to look for. "Marriage is about trust," Jonathan continued, raising his glass. "It's about believing that the person you've chosen will stand by you through anything life throws your way. It's about building something together that's stronger than either of you could create alone." Maya felt her phone vibrate with a message from Detective Martinez. "Teams in position. Are you ready?" She looked around the tent one more time, taking in the faces of people who were about to have their evening and their faith in love itself permanently altered. Mrs. Patterson, the church organist, sat with tears of joy streaming down her weathered cheeks. Rebecca raised her glass with genuine happiness for her cousin's success. Angela and Richard beamed with parental pride, their faces glowing with the satisfaction of seeing their daughter's dreams fulfilled. In 90 seconds, all of that joy would transform into shock, confusion, and heartbreak. Maya typed back, "Ready. Initiate on my signal." The best man's speech concluded with enthusiastic applause, and the band began setting up for dancing. This was the moment, the brief lull between formal events when guests were relaxed, happy, and completely unprepared for devastation. Maya walked to the front of the tent, her heels clicking against the temporary flooring with the rhythm of a countdown timer. She caught Lily's eye across the room and saw her sister's expression shift from contentment to confusion to growing alarm as Maya approached the microphone. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I'm sorry to interrupt the celebration, but I have something important to share." The tent fell silent except for the rustle of fabric as 300 people turned to look at her. Maya saw her parents' faces in the crowd, their expressions shifting from surprise to concern as they registered the gravity in her tone. "My name is Maya Chen, and Lily is my sister." Her voice was steady despite the earthquake happening in her chest. 6 months ago, I started saving for my own wedding. I opened a special account, added money from every paycheck, dreamed about the day I could marry the man I love. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the usual maid of honor speech, and guests were beginning to sense that something was terribly wrong. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So, if you are enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to our channel. 3 months ago, I discovered that money was disappearing from my account. At first, I thought it was a banking error. Then I realized the truth was much more complicated.
Maya's eyes found Lily's across the room, seeing her sister's face cycle through denial, fear, and finally cold calculation. The truth is that my sister forged my signature to gain access to my wedding fund. Over the course of 6 months, she stole nearly $30,000 to finance what you're all witnessing tonight. This elaborate performance designed to defraud a good man and his family. The silence was deafening. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, the distant sound of traffic beyond the garden walls, the whisper of fabric as guests shifted in their seats with growing discomfort. Furthermore, Maya continued, pulling the manila envelope from her purse, my sister is not in love with Marcus Wellington. She's in love with a man named Alex Morrison, who's sitting in the third row recording this speech for blackmail purposes. Their plan was to consummate this marriage long enough to gain access to Marcus's family trust, then disappear together with both the stolen money and whatever they could extract from the Wellington fortune. The explosion of reaction was immediate and chaotic. Guests began talking all at once, their voices creating a wall of sound that included everything from gasps of shock to angry demands for explanation. Maya watched Marcus's face transform from confusion to understanding to devastating heartbreak in the space of 3 seconds. "This is insane!" Lily's voice cut through the chaos as she stood, her wedding dress flowing around her like armor. "Maya, you're having some kind of breakdown. This is jealousy talking. You can't stand that I found happiness first." But Maya was ready for this response. She opened the envelope and pulled out the first photograph, a clear image of Lily and Alex kissing outside a hotel 3 weeks ago while Marcus was in Chicago on business. "Detective Martinez?" Maya called, and suddenly the tent was filled with law enforcement officers moving with professional efficiency. Alex Morrison bolted from his seat, but 2 officers intercepted him before he reached the tent's exit. His phone, still recording, clattered to the ground as he was placed in handcuffs, the evidence of his own criminal intent preserved in digital form.
Explain what? Marcus's voice was gaining strength, powered by righteous anger. Explain how you studied my family's history to know exactly what to say? Explain how you researched my charitable interests to appear compatible? Explain how you've been planning to rob us from the moment we met? Detective Martinez approached the head table with handcuffs and a warrant. Lily Chen, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. This is all lies, Lily screamed, but her protests were undermined by the evidence Maya was now distributing to the head table. Bank statements showing the stolen funds, text messages between Lily and Alex discussing their retirement plan, hotel receipts proving their ongoing affair throughout the courtship and engagement. Maya watched her parents process the evidence, seeing their faces cycle through disbelief, disappointment, and heartbreak. Angela was crying openly, her dreams of family unity shattered by the revelation of such calculated betrayal. Richard stood frozen, his medical training inadequate preparation for this kind of emotional trauma. How long have you known? Mrs. Wellington's voice was steady despite the devastation in her eyes. She was addressing Maya directly, understanding that this level of evidence required months of investigation. 3 months of active investigation, Maya replied honestly. But I suspected something was wrong 6 months ago when the first withdrawals appeared. 3 months, Marcus repeated, the timeline hitting him like a physical blow. You knew for 3 months, and you let me. We went ring shopping 3 months ago. You watched me pick out engagement rings for someone who was planning to destroy my family. The accusation in his voice cut deep, and Maya understood that she would bear some responsibility for his pain, regardless of her ultimate decision to expose the truth. I needed irrefutable evidence, she said quietly. Without it, this would have looked like sibling rivalry or jealousy. I needed to protect you from doubt. Protect me? Marcus's laugh was bitter and broken. I've been living a lie for 6 months, falling in love with someone who doesn't exist, planning a future with a criminal. How is any of that protection? Maya had no answer for that, because he was right. In trying to build an airtight case, she had allowed the deception to continue, had watched Marcus fall deeper in love with an illusion, had enabled him to make promises and plans that would now have to be unmade. As Lily was led away in handcuffs, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a fallen angel's wings, she turned to Maya with an expression of pure hatred. You destroyed everything. You couldn't stand that I was smarter than you, that I found a way to have the life we both wanted. You'd rather destroy my happiness than admit I won." The words revealed the depth of Lily's self-deception. Even now, facing arrest and public humiliation, she saw herself as the victim, Maya as the jealous sister who had sabotaged a legitimate romance. There was no acknowledgement of the theft, the forgery, the emotional devastation she had inflicted on multiple families. "You stole from me," Maya said simply. "You stole my money, my trust, and my faith in family. But most of all, you stole a good man's heart for profit. That's not winning. That's just cruel." As Lily was led away in handcuffs, the remaining guests sat in stunned silence, processing the complete transformation of what had begun as a fairy tale celebration. Maya watched at the wreckage of the evening: overturned chairs, abandoned champagne glasses, faces streaked with tears and shock. The beautiful cake still stood untouched at the center of the tent, its sugar flowers perfect and pristine, a monument to dreams that had been revealed as elaborate lies. Servers stood frozen with trays of food that no one wanted to eat. Musicians held instruments they no longer knew how to play in this new reality.
Maya's phone buzzed with a call from James. She looked at his name on the screen, knowing that she would have to explain everything that had happened, would have to reveal the months of investigation she had conducted in secret, would have to admit that their wedding fund was gone and their trust would need rebuilding. But first, she had to face the immediate consequences of her choice. Marcus sat alone at the head table, still wearing his boutonniere, still surrounded by the elaborate decorations that had been meant to celebrate the beginning of his married life. Mrs. Wellington stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, both of them staring at the evidence scattered across the white tablecloth. Maya approached them slowly, her heels loud in the unnatural quiet of the tent. "I'm sorry," she said, knowing the words were inadequate. "I'm sorry it had to happen this way, and I'm sorry I couldn't find a way to spare you the public humiliation." Marcus looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed but dry. Did she ever feel anything real for me, or was it all performance? Maya considered lying, offering comfort through false hope, but this man had just had his life built on lies. He deserved truth, even if it hurt. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I watched her with you during my investigation, and there were moments that seemed genuine, but I also read her text messages with Alex, and they were planning this escape from the beginning. Even if she felt something, it wasn't enough to change her plans." Marcus nodded slowly, accepting the complexity of the answer. "Thank you," he said finally, "for having the courage to tell the truth. I know this cost you everything, too." Maya looked around the tent at the devastation of what should have been a perfect evening. Her family was scattered, her parents trying to process their daughter's criminality, Rebecca crying in a corner as she realized her role in introducing Lily to potential victims, other relatives and family friends staring at Maya with expressions ranging from gratitude to blame. "Yes," she said quietly, "it cost everything. But some things are more important than keeping peace." As Detective Martinez finished collecting evidence and witnesses, Maya found herself alone in the tent with the remnants of a celebration that had transformed into a crime scene. The chandeliers still glittered overhead, the flowers still perfumed the air with sweetness, the cake still stood ready to be cut in celebration, but the fairy tale was over, and reality was just beginning. The silence that followed the arrests was more deafening than the chaos had been. Maya stood at the center of the reception tent, watching 300 wedding guests process the complete destruction of what they believed to be a love story. The string quartet had stopped playing mid-song, their instruments suspended in confused silence. Servers held trays of untouched hors d'oeuvres, unsure whether to continue service or begin cleanup. The beautiful cake remained untouched, its sugar flowers now seeming to mock the very concept of celebration. Detective Martinez approached Maya with an evidence bag containing Lily's phone. "We'll need your statement tonight, but I wanted you to see this first." She showed her the screen displaying a text conversation between Lily and Alex from just 2 hours earlier. "Phase 3 ready?" Alex had written.
Ceremony complete. Moving to extraction tomorrow as planned. M suspects nothing, Lily had replied. Hotel confirms penthouse booked. Cayman accounts ready. See you in paradise, Mrs. Morrison. Maya stared at the messages, feeling sick. Even during her own wedding ceremony, Lily had been coordinating the final stages of her escape plan. The Mrs. Morrison reference revealed that she and Alex were already legally married, making today's ceremony an elaborate fraud designed to commit bigamy for financial gain.
There's more, Detective Martinez said, scrolling through additional messages. They've done this before. Denver in 2019, Portland in 2021, Seattle last year. Same pattern: gain access to wealthy families through romantic relationships, steal funds to finance the con, disappear before the truth emerges. Maya sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the scope of her sister's criminal enterprise. This wasn't a moment of weakness or desperation. It was a practiced profession, a deliberate choice to build a life by destroying others. How many victims? Maya asked. We're still investigating, but at least 7 families over the past 4 years. Combined losses total nearly $500,000. Detective Martinez's voice carried professional sympathy, mixed with genuine anger. Your evidence broke the case wide open. Without your investigation, they would have succeeded again and moved on to the next city. Marcus's mother approached them, her face pale but determined. Mrs. Wellington had spent the past 20 minutes on the phone with lawyers and bank officials, ensuring that any access Lily might have gained to family accounts was immediately revoked. Detective, I need to know, how much of our financial information did she obtain? Our lawyers are advising immediate security measures, but we need to understand the scope of potential damage. Detective Martinez consulted her notes. Based on the evidence Ms. Chen provided, the defendant gained access to basic account information, but hadn't yet acquired the detailed financial data needed for large-scale theft. The marriage was intended to provide legal standing for inheritance claims and joint accounts. Mrs. Wellington nodded, her business acumen evident despite her emotional distress. Thank you. We'll coordinate with your investigation. She turned to Maya, her expression complex. I need to ask, why didn't you come to us sooner? We could have protected Marcus from this humiliation. The question Maya had been dreading finally arrived, carrying all the weight of moral complexity she had wrestled with for months. Because without irrefutable evidence, it would have looked like family jealousy. Lily is very convincing, very skilled at manipulation. Marcus was in love. He would have believed her denials over my accusations. So you let him fall deeper in love with a lie. You let him plan a future, make promises, involve our entire family in celebrating something you knew was false. Maya met her gaze directly, accepting the judgment. Yes, I made that choice because I believed the alternative was worse. If I had spoken too soon, they would have modified their plan, covered their tracks, and probably succeeded anyway. At least this way there is evidence to prosecute them and prevent them from victimizing other families. Mrs. Wellington studied Maya's face for a long moment. That was an incredibly difficult decision to make alone. The burden you've carried these past months. She paused, seeming to recalibrate her assessment. Thank you for having the courage to speak when it mattered most. Across the tent, Maya could see her own family struggling with their own revelations. Angela sat at a corner table, her face buried in her hands as Richard rubbed her shoulders with gentle, helpless movements. Rebecca stood nearby, her social worker training inadequate preparation for processing her own unwitting role in facilitating criminal activity. Maya approached them slowly, each step feeling like a betrayal of family loyalty, even though she knew her choices had been necessary. Mom, Maya said softly, sitting down beside Angela. Her mother looked up with eyes red from crying and confusion. How long have you known what she really was? Angela's voice was barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter what remained of her family. I started suspecting something was wrong 6 months ago when the bank statements didn't match my records, but I didn't want to believe it was intentional. I kept thinking there had to be another explanation. When did you know for certain? Richard asked, his medical training making him focus on facts rather than emotions. 3 months ago, when I hired a private investigator to follow up on the bank's findings. That's when we discovered the pattern of previous cons, the relationship with Alex, the plans to disappear after the wedding. Maya pulled out copies of the evidence she had gathered, spreading them across the table like a coroner laying out the details of a death. Angela stared at the photographs of Lily and Alex together, the bank statements showing systematic theft, the text messages revealing the calculated nature of the romance. This isn't the daughter I raised. The Lily I know was kind, generous, protective of family. When did she change? Richard asked, studying the timeline of criminal activity. Something must have triggered this transformation. Maya had wondered about the same thing during her investigation, trying to identify the moment when her sister had crossed the line from normal selfishness into criminal behavior. I think it was gradual. Remember how she started borrowing money in college and never paying it back? How she would charm her way out of consequences instead of taking responsibility? We always called it Lily being Lily. But maybe it was actually Lily learning that she could manipulate people without facing real consequences. We enabled this, Angela said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Every time we excused her behavior, every time we gave her money instead of making her earn it, every time we let her charm her way out of trouble, we taught her that other people's resources were hers to take. The guilt in her mother's voice was devastating to witness. Maya reached across the table to take Angela's hand. Mom, you couldn't have known this would happen. You raised us both the same way, with the same values. I didn't become a criminal. That was Lily's choice, not your failure. But the signs were there, Richard said quietly. The financial irresponsibility, the elaborate stories that never quite added up, the way she could convince anyone of anything. We saw it all and chose to interpret it as charm rather than manipulation. Before Maya could respond, her phone rang. James, I have to take this, she said, stepping away from the table. Her fiancé had been texting worried messages for the past hour, responding to her cryptic updates about the wedding taking an unexpected turn. Maya, what's happening? Your last text said something about police. Are you okay? Maya looked around the tent at the scene of devastation, overturned chairs, abandoned dinner plates, clusters of guests talking in hushed, shocked tones about what they had witnessed. James, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting, okay? You're scaring me. What's wrong? Remember when I told you I had loaned Lily money for her wedding? That wasn't true. She stole our wedding fund, forged my signatures, and used the money to finance an elaborate con to defraud her new husband and his family. I've been investigating for 3 months, gathering evidence, working with police. Tonight, at the reception, I exposed everything. She's been arrested. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Maya wondered if the call had been dropped. James, are you there? I'm here. His voice sounded hollow, distant. I'm trying to process what you just said. You've been investigating your own sister for 3 months and didn't tell me? I couldn't risk the investigation being compromised. I couldn't risk you being implicated if things went wrong. I had to protect you. Protect me? James's voice was rising, powered by hurt and confusion. Maya, we're supposed to be partners. We're supposed to be getting married. You don't protect me by lying to me for 3 months about something this massive. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet again, realizing that exposing Lily's crimes had only been the beginning of the consequences she would face. James, please try to understand. No, you try to understand. While I've been working double shifts to rebuild our wedding fund, feeling grateful for your generosity to your sister, you've been conducting a secret investigation into theft. Our money was stolen, Maya. Our future was stolen, and you handled it alone instead of trusting me enough to tell me the truth. The hurt in his voice was worse than anything Lily had done to her. Maya realized that in her determination to protect everyone else, she had betrayed the most important relationship in her life. I can explain everything, she said desperately. When I get home, I can show you all the evidence, walk you through my decision-making process. Right now, I need space to process this. I need to understand how the woman I plan to marry could keep something this big secret for 3 months. James's voice was gentle but firm. I'll call you tomorrow. The line went dead, leaving Maya staring at her phone in the wreckage of what had been a perfect evening just hours earlier. She had saved Marcus from financial devastation and exposed a criminal enterprise, but the cost was higher than she had anticipated. Bad news? Detective Martinez appeared beside her, noting Maya's expression. My fiancé just learned that I've been lying to him for 3 months about our stolen wedding fund. He thought I had generously loaned the money to Lily. He's been working overtime to rebuild savings that were actually stolen, feeling grateful for my sisterly sacrifice. I laughed bitterly. I was so focused on protecting everyone from Lily's lies that I ended up lying to the person who matters most. Detective Martinez nodded sympathetically. Truth-telling is complicated when you're trying to protect multiple people from harm. You made the best decisions you could with impossible circumstances. Did I? I could have told James the truth while still investigating Lily. I could have warned Marcus earlier and helped him protect himself. Instead, I chose to handle everything alone and ended up hurting everyone I was trying to protect. Look around this tent, Detective Martinez said firmly. Look at what your investigation prevented. Without your evidence, Lily and Alex would have succeeded in their con, disappeared with hundreds of thousands of dollars, and moved on to destroy another family. Marcus would have discovered the truth eventually, probably after they had drained his accounts and disappeared, but by then there would be no way to recover the money or prosecute the criminals. Maya looked around the tent, trying to see it through the detective's eyes. Yes, the evening had been destroyed, relationships had been damaged, and trust had been shattered. But Marcus still had his fortune, his family's financial security was intact, and 2 career criminals were in custody instead of planning their next con. You saved him from a much worse fate, Detective Martinez continued. The emotional pain of tonight is terrible, but it's temporary. Financial devastation and the knowledge that you could have prevented it, that lasts a lifetime. Mrs. Wellington approached them again, having overheard the conversation. Detective Martinez is right, she said firmly. I've been thinking about this for the past hour, and I realized what you did took extraordinary courage. You sacrificed your own relationships, your own happiness to protect my family from devastation. That's not something we'll ever forget.
Maya felt tears finally beginning to flow, the emotional numbness of the past months giving way to overwhelming relief and grief. I just wanted to do the right thing, but I'm not sure there was a right thing to do. Every choice involved betraying someone. That's what makes it courage rather than just good intentions, Mrs. Wellington said gently. True courage means doing what's right, even when every option involves loss. As the tent continued to empty, Maya found herself sitting with Marcus, both of them staring at the untouched wedding cake that had been meant to symbolize their different but parallel dreams of love and commitment. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said quietly. "Anything. During your investigation, when you watched us together, did you see any moments that seemed real? Any times when she seemed to actually care about me rather than just performing?" Maya considered the question carefully, remembering the times she had followed them to restaurants, museums, charity events. "There were moments," she said honestly, "times when she seemed surprised by her own laughter, when she touched you without strategic purpose, when she looked proud to be with you. But I also saw her with Alex, and those interactions had a naturalness that yours never quite achieved." Marcus nodded, accepting the complex answer. "I need to believe that some of it was real, even if it wasn't enough to change her plans. Otherwise, I have to accept that I'm completely foolish about people, and I can't live with that level of self-doubt." "You're not foolish," Maya said firmly. "You're trusting, which is a gift in most circumstances. Lily is professionally skilled at deception. She's been practicing for years. The fact that she could fool you doesn't reflect poorly on your judgment." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "How do we move forward from something like this?" Maya looked around the tent one more time.
at the remnants of a celebration that had transformed into a revelation. We tell the truth, to ourselves, to the people we care about, to anyone who asks. We stop protecting people from difficult realities and start trusting them to handle the truth. And we remember that love built on honesty is worth more than happiness built on lies. As the evening finally came to an end, Maya found herself helping to pack up the evidence that would be used to prosecute her sister. Each photograph, each bank statement, each text message represented a choice she had made to value justice over family peace, truth over comfortable illusions. The cost had been enormous, but as she watched Marcus embrace his mother with genuine emotion for the first time all evening, Maya knew she had made the right choice. Some fairy tales needed to end for real love to have a chance to begin.
As Maya watched the newlyweds' first dance, she faced an impossible choice: expose her sister's crimes and destroy what appeared to be a perfect wedding, or stay silent and allow Marcus to become the victim of financial devastation that could ruin his life. Maya's decision came when she overheard Lily and Alex discussing their plans for accessing Marcus's accounts during their honeymoon. The callousness in her sister's voice as she spoke about manipulating someone who genuinely loved her shattered any remaining hope that this was a misunderstanding or a temporary lapse in judgment. With hands trembling, Maya approached the wedding security team and asked them to contact law enforcement. Within an hour, FBI agents arrived at the reception. Maya watched in horror and relief as they arrested Lily and Alex in front of 150 shocked wedding guests, their designer outfits replaced with handcuffs as the fairy tale collapsed into a nightmare of criminal charges and shattered trust. Marcus's reaction was devastating to witness. The man who had been glowing with happiness hours earlier stood frozen in disbelief as agents explained that his marriage was built on lies and his new wife had been planning to rob him blind. The wedding guests, family friends, colleagues, and relatives watched in stunned silence as the celebration transformed into a crime scene. In the weeks following the arrest, the full scope of Lily's criminal enterprise became clear. She and Alex had been running sophisticated, long-term cons for nearly a decade, targeting wealthy individuals through carefully constructed romantic relationships. They would research their marks extensively, create false backgrounds and identities, and systematically drain their victims' resources over months or years. Maya learned that her sister had been living a completely fabricated life. The scholarship to study abroad in college that the family had been so proud of, funded by stolen money. The successful career in event planning, a cover for identifying and accessing potential victims. The charming personality and generosity that had always made Lily the family favorite, carefully cultivated tools for manipulation and theft. The investigation revealed at least 7 previous victims across multiple states, with financial losses totaling over $3 million. Some victims had lost their retirement savings, others had been forced into bankruptcy, and several had suffered severe emotional trauma that required years of therapy to overcome. Marcus, meanwhile, was discovering that everything he thought he knew about his wife was a lie. The woman he'd fallen in love with didn't exist. She was a character Lily had created specifically to appeal to his values, interests, and vulnerabilities. The relationship he'd believed was built on genuine connection and shared dreams was actually a meticulously planned psychological manipulation designed to access his family's wealth. The revelation of Lily's crimes devastated the entire Chen family. Maya's parents, who had worked double shifts to support their daughter's education and celebrations, struggled to accept that one of their children was a career criminal. They oscillated between denial, guilt, and desperate attempts to rationalize Lily's behavior as the result of mental illness or external pressures. Maya's younger sister, Rebecca, who had inadvertently helped Lily meet Marcus by inviting her to social events where wealthy professionals gathered, was consumed with guilt over her unwitting role in the crime.
She took a leave of absence from work to process the reality that her sister had used family connections to identify and target victims. The extended family and family friends found themselves questioning every interaction they'd had with Lily, wondering what had been genuine and what had been performance. Wedding gifts were returned, relationships were strained, and the Chen family's reputation in their community was severely damaged. Maya faced particular scrutiny from family members who couldn't understand why she had chosen to expose her sister rather than trying to handle the situation privately. Some accused her of prioritizing Marcus's welfare over family loyalty, while others suggested she could have forced Lily to confess and make restitution without involving law enforcement. Maya's decision to expose her sister's crimes came with enormous personal costs. Her relationship with her parents became strained as they struggled to accept that Maya had chosen justice over family protection. Some relatives stopped speaking to her entirely, viewing her as a traitor who had destroyed the family's unity for the sake of someone they barely knew.
Her own romantic relationship with James suffered as well. The months of secret investigation had required Maya to lie repeatedly about her activities and emotional state. James felt betrayed by her secrecy and struggled to trust her even after understanding her impossible position. They entered couples counseling to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of complete honesty. The media attention was intense and invasive. The story of a sister exposing her siblings' wedding day crimes captured public imagination, leading to sensationalized coverage that portrayed Maya alternately as a hero and a betrayer. The family received threatening letters from people who believed family loyalty should supersede all other considerations, as well as grateful messages from fraud victims who thanked Maya for preventing similar crimes. Maya also had to testify extensively during the legal proceedings, reliving the investigation and the moment of decision repeatedly in depositions, grand jury testimony, and eventually at trial. The process was emotionally exhausting and legally complex, requiring her to maintain her composure while describing intimate details of her family's betrayal. Lily's behavior during the legal proceedings revealed the depth of her psychological detachment from the harm she had caused. Initially, she showed no remorse for her crimes, instead expressing anger at Maya for exposing her and frustration at being caught, rather than regret for her actions. During a jailhouse conversation with Maya, Lily attempted to justify her crimes as wealth redistribution, claiming that her victims were wealthy enough to absorb the losses without real hardship. She showed no empathy for the emotional trauma she had caused and seemed genuinely confused by Maya's moral objections to theft and deception. It took months of incarceration and mandatory counseling before Lily began to develop any understanding of the human cost of her actions. Her eventual letters to Maya showed gradual progress toward genuine remorse, but also revealed how thoroughly she had compartmentalized her crimes from their emotional impact on victims and family members. Lily was ultimately sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, with additional state charges pending in multiple jurisdictions. Alex received a similar sentence, and their criminal partnership was permanently dissolved. The legal proceedings took over 2 years to complete, keeping the trauma fresh for all involved parties throughout that period. Marcus's journey toward healing was complicated by the thoroughness of Lily's deception. Unlike victims of random crimes, he had to process the reality that someone he had loved and trusted completely had never existed as anything other than a carefully constructed lie designed to exploit his vulnerabilities. He entered therapy to address what psychologists term intimate betrayal trauma, the specific psychological damage caused when someone's closest relationships are revealed to be based on deception and exploitation. The process required him to rebuild his ability to trust his own judgment about people and relationships. With Maya's support, Marcus also became involved in advocacy work for fraud victims, using his experience to help others navigate the complex intersection of emotional and financial recovery. He discovered that many fraud victims struggled with shame and self-blame, wondering how they had failed to recognize obvious deception. Years later, Marcus was able to build a healthy romantic relationship with someone who knew his full history and loved him anyway. He credited Maya's intervention with saving him from even greater financial and emotional devastation, as Lily's plans would have continued escalating after their marriage.
The experience of exposing her sister's crimes fundamentally changed Maya's understanding of justice, family loyalty, and moral responsibility. She left her job in nonprofit administration to join the Wellington Foundation for Financial Justice, an organization dedicated to preventing and investigating family financial fraud. In her new role, Maya worked with law enforcement, financial institutions, and private investigators to identify patterns of fraud before they could cause devastation. She helped develop protocols for families facing similar dilemmas about loyalty versus accountability, and she provided consultation to law enforcement agencies dealing with complex family financial crimes. Maya also became a public speaker and author, sharing her story to help other families recognize the signs of financial manipulation and understand that love sometimes requires holding people accountable for their harmful choices. Her book, Necessary Lies: When Love Requires Truth, became a bestseller and helped establish new frameworks for thinking about family financial crimes.
Through her work, Maya encountered hundreds of families facing similar decisions about whether to expose financial crimes committed by relatives. She learned that these situations were far more common than most people realized, and that families consistently struggled with the same false choice between loyalty and justice that had tormented her. The aftermath of Lily's crimes continued affecting all involved parties for years. Maya's parents eventually divorced, unable to reconcile their different approaches to processing their daughter's betrayal. However, they maintained a friendship and continued co-parenting Maya's children, who grew up understanding the importance of honesty and accountability. Maya and James rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of complete transparency, using the crisis to develop better communication skills and a deeper understanding of trust. They eventually married in a small, honest ceremony that prioritized authenticity over spectacle. Lily served her full prison sentence and was released after demonstrating genuine rehabilitation and remorse. She found work with a nonprofit organization helping former inmates reintegrate into society, using her experience with financial crime to educate at-risk youth about recognizing and avoiding fraudulent schemes. The relationship between Maya and Lily slowly evolved into something cautious but respectful. They spoke occasionally and maintained limited contact, but never fully recovered the intimacy they had shared before Lily's crimes were revealed. Their interactions were cordial but careful, built on acceptance of reality rather than attempts to recreate their previous relationship. Maya's decision to expose her sister's crimes had consequences that extended far beyond their immediate family. The case became a landmark example in law enforcement training programs about family financial fraud, helping investigators understand the complex dynamics that often protect such crimes from detection. The wedding guests who witnessed the arrest were forced to confront their own assumptions about trust, family loyalty, and moral responsibility. Many of them went on to make different choices in their own lives when faced with moral dilemmas, understanding that sometimes love requires courage rather than comfort. Marcus's family established a foundation to support victims of financial fraud, providing both financial assistance and emotional support to people recovering from similar crimes. The foundation's work prevented numerous other scams and helped hundreds of families rebuild their lives after being victimized. Maya's children grew up with a sophisticated understanding of moral complexity, learning that ethical choices often require careful consideration of competing values rather than simple adherence to rules. Her daughter, Truth, became a lawyer specializing in white-collar criminal defense, seeking to balance accountability with compassion in the legal system. Through decades of reflection and professional work with similar cases, Maya developed nuanced insights about the relationship between family loyalty and moral responsibility. She learned that genuine love sometimes requires insisting that people face the consequences of their choices, even when those consequences are painful. Maya's experience taught her that protecting people from accountability often enables increasingly harmful behavior, while exposing wrongdoing, though traumatic in the short term, can create opportunities for genuine healing and redemption. She observed that families who chose honesty over comfort, while initially suffering greater disruption, ultimately developed stronger and more authentic relationships.
The case also revealed how financial crimes operate within family systems, exploiting trust and emotional bonds to avoid detection and accountability. Maya's work helped establish new understanding about how love and loyalty can be weaponized by manipulative individuals to continue harmful behavior. Perhaps most importantly, Maya learned that moral courage is not the absence of fear or doubt, but the ability to act in alignment with deeply held values despite uncertainty about outcomes. Her choice to expose Lily's crimes was not made with confidence about its consequences, but with clarity about its necessity.
40 years after the wedding that never was, Maya reflects on how that single moment of moral courage created ripple effects that continue influencing lives and systems. Her decision to choose truth over family peace became a catalyst for legal reforms, therapeutic innovations, and educational programs that have prevented countless similar crimes. The story challenges conventional wisdom about family loyalty, suggesting that genuine love sometimes requires people to insist on accountability rather than offering protection from consequences. It demonstrates that justice and compassion are not mutually exclusive, but can work together to create opportunities for healing and redemption. Maya's experience shows that moral complexity is not an excuse for moral paralysis, that even when all available choices involve pain and loss, some choices serve truth and justice while others enable continued harm. Her story provides a framework for thinking through similar dilemmas and finding the courage to act according to deeply held values. The wedding that never was ended with handcuffs and devastated dreams, but it began a larger story about what happens when people choose courage over comfort, truth over illusion, and justice over convenience. That larger story continues being written by every person who faces similar choices and decides that love is strong enough to survive honesty. In an era of increasing financial sophistication and digital connectivity, the types of crimes Lily committed have become more common and more complex. Online dating platforms, social media, and digital financial systems create new opportunities for the kind of long-term relationship fraud that devastated Marcus and his family. Maya's work continues through speaking engagements, consultation with law enforcement agencies, and mentorship of families facing similar crises. She receives hundreds of letters each year from people struggling with the same impossible choice between family loyalty and moral responsibility that she faced 4 decades ago. The frameworks Maya developed for thinking through these dilemmas have been adopted by family counselors, law enforcement agencies, and legal professionals across the country. Her approach emphasizes that love and accountability are not mutually exclusive, and that protecting people from consequences often causes more harm than allowing natural consequences to occur. Her story serves as both warning and inspiration, warning about how trust can be exploited by those closest to us, and inspiration about the possibility of surviving moral courage and building something meaningful from the wreckage of beautiful lies. Subscribe to Truth and Consequences, where silence is never forgotten and where the most difficult stories reveal the most important truths. Join thousands of listeners who have discovered that moral courage is not the absence of fear, but the commitment to act with integrity despite uncertainty. In a world where family loyalty and ethical responsibility often seem to conflict, these stories provide frameworks for navigating impossible choices with wisdom, compassion, and strength. Whether you're facing your own moral dilemmas, supporting someone who is, or simply seeking to understand how ordinary people find extraordinary courage in crisis moments, Truth and Consequences offers both insight and inspiration. Subscribe today to join a community of listeners who believe that love is strong enough to survive honesty and that justice and compassion can coexist even in the most complex circumstances. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable the person you're trying to protect.